Yeah, and then stand back up. Okay, we're good. All right. Let's go. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Okay. Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start, just want to note that Director Clausen is taking a much-needed little mini vacation. He will not be in attendance today. Rick.
I confirm that a quorum is present and proper notice was sent to all members of record.
Terry.
I move the board approve the agenda.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Rick.
I move the board approve the minutes of the October 6th, 2021 meeting of the membership.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 6th meeting of the membership. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I move the board approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2021 regular board meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 20th, 2021 regular board meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Rick?
I move the board approve the minutes of the October 26th, 2021 special board meeting.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the October 26, 2021 special board meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It is now time on our agenda for member comments. That is for comments on agenda items or any other association business. This is your only chance for member comment. Just want to remind everyone of that. I also remind you of the rules of courtesy. Please keep your talk civil. If you're on Zoom and would like to speak, I'm going to ask Taylor to open your microphones now and say, "I want to speak." And we'll give it a moment. Taylor's getting everybody to set their coffee cup down and speak up. Anything, Taylor? We have none wishing to speak on Zoom. Anyone in attendance today that wishes to speak, please make your way to the podium. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4.1. Jim Zavrel, Planning Committee Chair, would you please give us your update? This is, Jim is updating us on the list of new assets and improvement reserve projects and the 5-year capital plan. Thank you, Jim.
I guess everyone was in such a hurry to hear my report that they didn't want to interrupt with any previous comments. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board, and friends and neighbors. I'm here representing the Planning Committee to give you our recommendations for new asset improvement projects for inclusion in the 5-year capital budget for 2022 through 2026. The Planning Committee prepares recommendations to the board on all future capital spending. That's our principal mission. We gather proposals from the board, general manager, staff, committee, and members for recommendations on new assets and improvements to infrastructure. This year, we've actively solicited membership suggestions. Back in June, we put an article in the Lake Currents. We also had a notification in the weekly email blast that we were soliciting any suggestions for improvements. We successfully received over a dozen suggestions, most of which were well thought out and reasonable. Of those, we referred several to operating centers for action under the operating budget. For example, here at the community center, one of the suggestions was to pave the pathway to the pavilion out there, and that was done as part of the paving work here in the parking lot. Also, the suggestion for a bocce ball court has been followed up on by community activities. And so those were two that we received and either concurrently with community activities or we passed them along to them for their actions. A number of the suggestions we received needed clarifications or more information on how they intended to fund certain suggestions they had for infrastructure. But actually this year, 2 member suggestions were complete enough to actually make it into our review and recommendation process. And one of them actually we are recommending will be approved. So I just wanted to recommend to the members here and present in the meeting and those on Zoom that we are listening, and that if you have ideas for improvements to infrastructure, please reach out to the Planning Committee anytime during the year, and we will walk you through the process and try to give you an idea of what we need to make reasonable decisions on this. The second item that we do as part of the planning process is to hold the annual town hall meeting, which was the 28th of September this year, to inform membership on what suggestions for new asset and improvement projects we've received, along with the big ticket repair and reserve items that are in the Miller-Dodson report. Then we have spent about the last 6 weeks in deliberation and review to prioritize projects using a logical, uniform, repeatable standard that are based on LOWA visions and board goals that you all produced for the coming board term. We considered a total of 15 recommended projects this year. 2 projects were recommended to the board for outright approval. 6 additional projects were approved upon limited conditions. In other words, we recommend the project to the board, but it's based on receiving either further information or clarification. You all have received a copy of our recommendations earlier this week. Hopefully you've had a chance to look them over. I'd be happy to comment on the projects that we approved, go over each of them with you, or if you'd like to save time, I'll just step back and answer any questions or clarifications you may need on those projects, whatever your preference is.
Board members, any questions of Jim? Jim, your process is always is an excellent way to evaluate the multitude of things we get asked for. 15 projects proposed, 2 approved, but the ones, as you say, with conditions, is well thought out, and we greatly appreciate what you've
Yeah.
done.
And that's, I just wanted to say, I attended their meeting where they went through every single project, and every member of the committee who was there made their comments, very thoughtful comments about the project that was proposed and why they were supporting it or had, suggested conditions or deferral. I thought it was a very, very good meeting. Well-balanced and, it was clear to me that there was no favoritism. Everyone got to speak their mind and everyone got to vote. So it was really a great meeting. So
That's right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Jennifer?
I would like to say that in reading this, I thought that, well, the same as Terry, that this was so well thought out, so well presented. And I wanted to thank you and your committee for providing this very thorough, well thought out planning committee recommendations.
Phil?
Jim, congratulations, great job,
Thank
and
you.
really helpful to the staff as well. I wondered if there's anything you wanted to note that would affect the budget for 2022. I looked at your recommendations, I see the long spreadsheet behind it, and I don't want to misread what I'm seeing here. It looks like what the year you're listing is the year that it was requested?
Yes.
And so, could you talk a little bit about the year requested and what, if anything, the planning committee recommends for the budget we're about to go into?
Certainly. The material I presented to you, there are a couple spreadsheets that are ranked by how the planning committee members ranked them as we went through our criteria for ranking. So obviously the ones that have the highest ranking generally are the ones that we feel are the highest priorities. For instance, the top priority is the third gate issue. That aligns with board goals because board goals are one of our important criteria as we go through the voting process. However, we approved the third gate on certain conditions, and they're basically very simple conditions that we felt that the entry process, the entry gate issue needed to be addressed as soon as possible, whether that wait for the new fiscal year or, as it appears now, may start in this current fiscal year. And so rather than dive headlong into engineering projects and engineering studies, that to go ahead and examine what we can do to alleviate the entry gate issues. And since we put those recommendations together, the board has put together a list of implementation of the board goals or a plan for implementation. And it appears that that's what your thoughts are as well, to try different strategies to improve the entry gate. So third gate, obviously there are several proposals that were made regarding stormwater management improvement. And we approved pretty much all of those and ranked them fairly high for consideration, but all of them were conditional on the Lakes Management Report that we're expecting before the end of the year, because we didn't want to impose our judgment over the professional judgment of A. Morton Thomas. So yeah, we think Lakes Management and Stormwater Management are important projects to consider, but we're not experts on it. We want to see what they list as their priorities. So I think the two other outliers or two other items that I should bring to your attention. One is the outdoor patio at the Wood Center. We thought for a fairly low expenditure of funds, that would be a big improvement, and especially would in the post-COVID era, post-quarantine era, that having an outdoor eating space when the weather is pleasant really would make more people comfortable coming to the Fairways Cafe. We thought that was a great idea from the Ad Hoc Wood Center Committee. We also considered and spoke extensively about the Route 3 security fencing. Given the Miller-Dodson report on how expensive replacement of the current wooden rail fencing is going to be. The Planning Committee thought it was really important for the board to consider to go ahead and do security fencing, which would we had recommended previously that it be 6-foot aluminum fencing rather than the wooden split rail fencing. To consider the cost of that, even if it's done in stages, rather than replace the wooden fencing, which really it presents no impediment at all to entry into the lake. It's aesthetically pleasing, but then the black aluminum fencing is not bad looking either. So we think the Route 3 fencing, it's time to look into that and to see if we can't improve that. And it's certainly the board has already discussed moving that into a single year to consider, but I believe it's actually going to be fiscal year 23. So that doesn't affect this next year as much. So I'd say those are the most immediate projects that we saw fit on budget.
Thank you, Jim. And any other director questions?
Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jim. Taylor, I'm going to ask a question. We seem to be getting a little feedback. Can we turn that speaker a little bit away? Okay, we are now at item 5 on the agenda, reports. First one up is Lee Frame, Orange County Supervisor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Not too much going on now. The next Board of Supervisors meeting will be here in Lake of the Woods on the 17th of November. It's a Wednesday. We normally have meetings on Tuesday, but usually we coordinate it with the Virginia Association of Counties conference that goes from Sunday through Tuesday. And we ended up doing that. Plus, we can get dinner down here on Wednesday, and we can't get it on Tuesday. We probably will be adopting the new voting districts at that meeting. We had the public hearing at our last meeting in October, but we couldn't adopt it there because it goes into effect as soon as you adopt it. Oh. And we had an election to go first, so we couldn't do it then. You can't do it more than 60 days before then because you don't want to be shifting people from one district to another at that time. Anyway, so we will we did get some comments. One comment about my district was that it was too large. I had too many people. Lake of the Woods District 5 has more than any of the other districts. The district across, and the complaint came from across Route 3, which had the lowest number. However, the area across Route 3 is probably going to grow a lot in the next 10 years. And there's not as much room to grow inside Lake of the Woods for the next 10 years. So we figured that's part of the reason that rationale for that. Anyway, we would be taking a vote on that. We passed a zoning modification with regard to accessory dwelling units. This is a program that has been going on across the country in terms of trying to find affordable housing and doing and allowing in more and more jurisdictions, allowing people to have accessory dwelling units. In this case, really the only change is we eliminated the 800 square foot limit. Again, you still have the same kind of limits in terms of setbacks and things like that for that, but you no longer have a limit of 800 foot. You can still only have one accessory dwelling unit per lot, per home. I know that some people had expressed concerns. It doesn't apply to Lake of the Woods because you have your own covenants that drive that. But what I have seen in some other states, not Virginia, but other states, where they've said that they've eliminated covenants limitations on those things, trying to say, hey, you gotta, if somebody wants it, your local covenants can't stop it. No, but that's not true in Virginia, so nobody here should be worried. I need volunteers for about 4 separate committees. The Community Services Board. They deal with behavior health and aging issues. the area on aging, and I had a gentleman from a different part of the county, but he got a job elsewhere, so he's not there, and I've got a vacancy on that committee. I have a criminal vacancy on the Criminal Justice Board. They deal with issues such as pretrial and alternatives to incarceration. They have a variety of issues, so I need somebody there. We need a District 5 representative on the Orange County Youth Commission, and so I could use somebody there. I also need a District 5 member of the Social Services Board. So we've got, that's a Social Services Advisory Board. So I've got people, and anybody finds any interest in any of those kind of projects to let me know, and we'll see what we can do. As you probably know, all the existing supervisors got reelected. The only significant challenge was to Keith Marshall, who was in an appointed slot, and his term is only for 2 years, filling out he's in the same cycle that I am, another 2 years. That was a reasonable challenge. I was a little irritated because at least one of the political parties is trying to turn local elections into a partisan issue, but fortunately it didn't make much of a thing. I think there was 25% or 30% on write-ins based upon some partisan advertising. We hope to have our December 21st Board of Supervisors meeting at the new Public Safety Building. That is a beautiful facility. I think that the county can be proud of it. I'm not sure when we're going to have an open house, but we will have one so people can go out and see all the things that are going on there. That's where our sheriff will be, our fire and rescue, our 911 center, the emergency control center, and that's where we will have our Board of Supervisors meeting. So that's saves me about 5 miles per meeting. Subject to your questions, that's my report.
Directors, any questions for Mr. Frame? Members in attendance, any questions for Mr. Frame? And Taylor, I'm going to ask any members on Zoom that have questions of Mr. Frame. If so, say, I want to speak. Doesn't appear to be any. Well, Lee, thank you so much.
All right.
Next, we have 5.2, Sheriff Amos. He is not here. Is he joining us on Zoom? Do we know? Okay, he is not on Zoom. We'll move to 5.3, report from Security Chief Walker.
Morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
Members of the board. We did ask the community for assistance. Neighborhood Watch was notified that we did experience some vandalism at Hollyfield Park on the afternoon of October 31st. So we're definitely following any leads that the Neighborhood Watch can provide. We are preparing for the traffic shift project at the main gate. The test period will be Tuesday the 9th, this coming Tuesday the 9th, and then we'll do it again on Wednesday the 17th ahead of Thanksgiving, which is the 25th. We do expect traffic volume to be 700 to 1,000 guests on Thursday the 25th. Bear with us. We're doing 2 test periods. Hopefully we can get everything worked out before Thanksgiving. So everything will start going into place Tuesday morning around 07, and we should start diverting traffic into the inbound lanes right around 9 o'clock is the hope. So we're looking forward to that. Also this coming week, we have the Traffic Logic display board will be installed on Lakeview Parkway. The pole that thing mounts on finally arrived. I don't know where the heck it was, but that was the hardest part, to find a 3-inch pole somewhere in this country. AUS has been working extremely hard on the COVID-19 issue across the United States, preparing for the OSHA rule release. So we don't interfere with any of our contract obligations or service interruptions. Your current AUS staff on site is 100% fully vaccinated, and they have already started the booster process with the Moderna. So we're in great shape. Some other AUS locations are struggling. So we may be asked to help some of our locations just in our immediate area, Mary Washington Hospital or Lake Landor, or anyone else that may have any type of issues. We're getting ready to complete the body-worn camera testing period. This testing period started on July 21st of this year. Of course, everybody knows the body-worn camera systems were graciously donated by Sheriff Mark Amos and Major Lacasse. The test period seems like a long time, but we learned an extraordinary amount of information in that period. It is not as easy as just slapping this thing on your chest and going to work. So there's a lot of things to learn. We've also used the Orange County Sheriff's Office training platform and also their standard operating guidelines to build our program for AUS here on site for Lake of the Woods. The number one question I'm always asked is, when is it turned on? When is it turned on by citizens? This is only worn by our sworn law enforcement officers on site. Your access control is not wearing it. Your armed security officers are not wearing it. And the only time it's activated by a sworn law enforcement officer is when they're exercising their police powers in the line of the duty. So it's not, it's not on inside a committee meeting. It's not on today, now. It's only on when we're exercising our police powers. And that is my report, subject to your questions, sir.
Directors, any questions of Chief? I also want to refer to, if any questions on item 7.2 about the body cam. Phil, would you want anything?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, at 7.2 on your agenda, we're approving an amendment to the LOWA, Allied Universal Security Services contract to cover body cameras. The body camera program will, in a sense, go live once you approve it, if you do so today. So now would be the time if you have a question to ask of Chief Walker. The retention period for those, the camera footage, and I thought he described well when those cameras are on, would be 60 days. And the short answer, the reason why it's 60 days and not our normal 30 is because of LCC. If you're issued a summons the day after LCC, it's going to be about 45 days before you meet with the committee. And so we thought 60 was a good retention period.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I took a look on, trying to do a little research to try to figure out what the considerations are, as opposed to, the advantages are fairly obvious. But the question is, what are the considerations? And I think for us, perhaps it is the record retention and who could request access to it. Because one of the things we're stuck with with the Property Owners Act, which lots of times demonstrates that whenever the legislature is in session, no one's life, liberty, or property is safe. So my question is, given the Property Owners Act, you have an encounter with somebody that perhaps goes, generates a little bit of heat. Who would be able to request access to that record?
A member in good standing.
So now that's,
There's no qualification, just a member in
okay,
good
now that,
standing.
which once again demonstrates what I said about the legislature. Because one of the only consideration that I could find when I researched this was that the potential to invade the privacy of individuals. The fact that any member could request access to one of these things is, quite frankly, a concern.
And it would have to be with proper purpose. You have, according to the POA, you have to be in good standing and you have to have a proper purpose. So we would look at the proper purpose.
I would just,
And that might stop
I would just urge that the proper purpose be, looked at carefully, because I can just see some
Yes.
people, quite frankly, wanting to be voyeurs, and, it's an opportunity to gossip and everything else. So I do think that the potential for footage of unfortunate incidents could wind up, being circulated unless we take steps to make sure that we control it.
And it's my understanding from Mr. Rodenberg, it will be treated exactly like your access camera equipment is treated. So the request will come into Mr. Rodenberg's office, and he will verify that proper purpose is in place. And then it comes to my office for us to upload the equipment for Mr. Rodenberg to hand out. So.
And there would be a charge for the time it takes to find that and format it for another person.
But I am still concerned that, you know, there unfortunately are always a few people who would view someone in distress as an opportunity to get some entertainment out of it, and if nothing else. And I just think we need to be cautious.
Thank you, Walt.
Yes, sir.
Cliff?
Hi, Chief. How you doing?
Excellent, sir. Thank you.
Is this going to change in any way the way your officers present their case at LCC?
It would be available if they want to use that in a tribunal or general district court. It would be available.
So when the officer comes in to present their case to LCC, are they going to use the footage automatically or only if, in the judgment of the officer or you, it's germane to the case and might be helpful?
I would say that would be up to the officer, just like we do in general district court, are working with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office of what they would like to see
Okay.
if it's relevant to a case.
Now, if it's a criminal matter, and Phil, maybe this is for you too. If it's a criminal matter and we are going to refer that, or they're going to be arrested and move on, does a member have a right to see that if that tape is used in a criminal matter, or does they have to ask the Commonwealth's attorney to see it?
That's an interesting question, and we would want to coordinate with the Commonwealth Attorney to make sure that we're not violating any sort of state law that might preempt the Property Owners Act. So I would just say we'd have to consider that at the time.
Well, I'm just going to say this, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So a lot of times when your officers come to the LCC, which I'm the liaison to, I think having this body cam footage may be very helpful. And I want them to seriously think about using it. My biggest concern, though, is the criminal part and what effect that has on our requirement to produce a copy of something or to give a copy of something. Where I come from, if it's a criminal matter, then you have to go to the Commonwealth's attorney, but I don't know that that applies under the Virginia Property Owners Act. So that's just food for thought.
Sir, I can definitely ask our Commonwealth Attorney that question. I'm sure it would be it would, of course, be made available to a defendant as part of evidence. And anything we earmark as criminal, we would actually save off the system until after the criminal process has been completed, whether it be a year or 18 months, and then delete that equipment.
Chief
Yes,
does
sir.
have a really good relationship with the Commonwealth Attorney, so he's the best person to ask ahead of time. That's probably good to know ahead of time. I wonder if the chief might say one word about discretion when it comes to cameras?
Sure. The post orders do dictate when the officer can shut down a camera if the citizen requests it, or if we have like a natural cause death inside a home, a health and welfare type check where we may be assisting someone off the ground or out of a latrine or a bathing situation. We can turn the unit off at that point. We do record the reason why we turned it off verbally, and then shut the system down for the citizens' privacy.
And again, the point is we're following what Sheriff Amos here in Orange County does for the most part in doing that.
Just one other thing I just want to say, here I was asking some questions that could be conceived as perhaps a little critical. I think we've had a couple of incidents since I've been on the board where you've interacted with somebody where the person is claimed, in my view, not accurately, that somehow or other they were a victim. And I think that, the ability to also protect, our security people from false allegations or, perhaps, inventive allegations. When people are saying, trying to turn their situation into, them being a miscreant into them being a victim. So I think that that's very useful too.
Yes, sir, and we saw that with our access camera equipment at the front gate. You have the citizen that calls Mr. Rodenberg and says, you know, I can't believe how I was treated at the gate. And as soon as Mr. Rodenberg says, we'll get on the video and audio review right now, and they're like, well, maybe it didn't, maybe. So we have a lot of that.
Again, the overall purpose of the body cameras is to protect everyone,
Correct.
the officer and the persons in which they're interacting.
And Phil is our gatekeeper for proper purpose, so at least we won't have, our members will know that they just can't be Curious George and say, hey, I want to see what happened. So,
They would
thank
have
you.
to state a proper purpose
Yep.
for knowing whatever it is.
Okay. Any other questions for Chief? Hearing, all right. Chief, thank you very much.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
We'll move down to item 5.4. Taylor, is Dan Cianci on the line? LOWA Fire and Rescue Chief? He's not there. Okay. Jim Hopkins, Orange County School Board, did notify us that he would not be here today. He is enjoying the races out at Montpelier today, so I hope he's having a good time. All righty. Now we're moving to item 5.6. Any reports from Treasurer?
No.
Secretary? None from you? Secretary? Yes.
I just wanted to report that we had on Wednesday, November 3rd, the committee chair orientation. 18 committee chairs and vice chairs attended. And I think it was a very successful meeting where there were a lot of questions asked and a lot of good conversation that was held. And I really appreciated that they all came and that they felt comfortable asking those questions. So that was a good event. The next committee event is the committee fair, which is November 20th from 1 till 4 o'clock. It'll be over at the Clubhouse. All are welcome. And the purpose is to try and generate interest in members joining our committees.
Thank you, Terry. Obviously, our committees are the backbone of what we do here, and so it's a good chance to find out where your interests might align with one of our 25 committees, I believe, Phil? Yes. So we got a spot for you if you want to help. Terry, we're back to you.
There we go. I move the board approve the committee changes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the committee changes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Phil, report from the general manager, item 5.7.
Thank you, Mr. President and directors and members. 5.7 is my report, and I'll cover a number of topics very lightly and be happy to answer any questions. First of all, coronavirus and how it affects LOWA operations. The big news this week was the vaccine mandate from OSHA is moving forward, and it looks like it will be in place January 4th. We believe that we are indeed covered under that mandate. It's a nose count. It isn't anything about full-time equivalents. And so given our workforce, we would be counted among that. We've begun to open a conversation with our employees to help them understand how this is going to be implemented. Our vaccination rate among the staff is 68%. We expect that to grow as time goes on because we're now requiring new employees to be vaccinated. Existing employees that are not vaccinated will have to be tested once a week. We're trying to get information about testing kits and understand exactly how that would work. I look at it as every morning all of our staff clocks in, and at the end of the day they clock out. And so we'll have to figure out a method that allows us to test once a week, and we're trying to get our ducks in line for that. So I do believe we will need the board to modify and update the policy that you previously adopted. The target date for that would be the December 15th meeting, and we'll set the table for you to do that. Then and I imagine we'll know a lot more by the time we get to December 15th. So it looks like this is really going to happen, and we're just trying to assuage some of the concerns of our employees, that they're valuable to us, and there are exceptions to vaccination, the two exceptions, medical and religious, and that we do allow for weekly testing to continue. The key issue there, though, is getting test kits. Right now, we don't know exactly where we're going to get them. We don't know exactly how many we need, but we know if we're testing once a week, we're going to need a number of them. So that's what we know on that point. January 4th being the first day of implementation. So why don't I stop there and see if you all have any questions. As I said, we're just coming up to understanding exactly what's expected and opening the communication with employees.
Directors, any questions? Walt?
Just again, wants to comment, just so everybody knows that the publication in the Federal Register, which is where the government has to put down their regulations and their explanation, is 450 pages long. So it's going to take a while for everybody to really figure out what it really means, because we always say the devil's in the details. It's the devil's in the details of a 450-page document.
Thank you, Walt.
Good point.
Yeah. Just briefly scanning a couple of areas. One of those was that employees must get paid time off to get tested or get the vaccination, but we're not required to pay for the testing. So that's all of that was something we'll have to work out as we go through. Hopefully, people find the discomfort of a weekly test to be more annoying than getting a shot, but
Yeah, because it is a nasal swab.
Yes.
At this point, we are assuming, based on the policy that you've looked at and approved before, that we would pay for the testing, and then we could get it in bulk rate.
Okay.
So the paid time off would be to go down to Orange, for example, and get in line and get a vaccination shot, which we've allowed employees to do up to date anyway. And Chief mentioned it earlier. His officers were some of the first to get the shots, and so their boosters are coming due, and they're getting their boosters. And so we have the first employees that are getting their boosters, and we'll track that as well. My shots were in April, so I would be due for a booster when it's my turn.
Okay. Any other? Continue, Phil.
All right, I'll switch to lakes. Two items there. As you know, we had to treat Keaton's Lake for blue-green algae. We almost made it through the year, but sometimes Mother Nature changes something, and it's not necessarily because we haven't done something right. It's because the conditions are right for those to bloom. We did have a first treatment. The second treatment will be Monday. So I guess the good news is we almost made it through the year. We only had one treatment. If we often get notifications from other places, other lakes, and they were having blooms in the summer, and we thought we almost made it. But one treatment is all we had to do this year. Also, the other big piece of news for lakes management is the CAT 306 dredger is in, and we included a picture of it, and maybe you were thinking it was going to be this huge piece of equipment, but it's rather compact, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's the little engine that could, and it's got a longer reach and a bigger bucket than the one we had. We expect it to be super efficient. We have not put it into operation yet. Our operator, we want him to be trained by the distributor before we go into action. There will be a period where we have both dredges operating, and so that's a plus. We'll have a period where we can have both in operation, but then we'll refer to the new CAT 306. One of the first uses will be at the forebay at Flat Run at the back gate. And what we're finding at Eastover Park and at Flat Run, these forebays are filling up faster than we thought. So the good news is, well, the surprising news is they're filling up faster than we thought. The good news is we're trapping enough that we can have it removed. So we're heartened that it is working. So wanted to tell you about the CAT 306. So let me turn to some other items, and I've got a savings and efficiencies item for you, and I think we've talked to you about this indirectly, but we wanted to quantify it. You'll remember the shade structures that got approved for new capital, and the planning committee commented on a couple of years ago, and we had to put those on hold because of COVID. Well, as we looked at purchasing those two shade structures, one for Sweetbriar and one for Clubhouse, we thought, wow, this is an awfully big expense for this item, and it looked like supplies were going to get supplies chain issues. There was going to be delays, and then our entrepreneurial capital projects manager, Hunter Spencer, and you've heard me brag about him before, and our buildings department got together, and Hunter said, I think we can build these here. I can get a kit and build these myself, or with the help of buildings. And so the long story short is we were able to install 3 shade structures at Sweetbriar Pool and 3 at Clubhouse Pool, including a 4th one for the not the picnic area, but the snack bar area, for much less than what was budgeted. And the amount is $24,426.19 because we used the contractor on all but the first one. And the contractor came up with a pretty innovative way of putting these together, and so kudos to him. He figured out how to do it economically, and we are expecting that Flow will contribute $2,566 for the snack bar shade. That was the deal that we had with them. So this is just a good example of how we were able to accomplish a capital project for less than expected. A few other items. We had a number of projects that got completed that we've been tracking and notifying you about. The Wood Center walk-in cooler freezer is complete and in use, and we were able to take the 3-door cooler out of the kitchen at Fairways, and it freed up a lot of space, and putting all the materials that were in the office and in that 3-door cooler into the cooler has made a big difference for the staff, so they thank you for that, and it's in operation. Also, the clubhouse roof is substantially complete. That was a huge project and one that had been on the capital plan for a while, and we were anxious to get to it, and it's been done. You've seen around the community that the paving projects are getting done one by one by Chemung Contracting. They've completed Lakeview Parkway. We still need to get striping done. The Harpers Ferry Mail Station, the Wood Center parking lot, the Community Center parking lot, including the walk area to the pavilion, the Fairway Drive Mail Station, and the Spotswood Mail Station are all on the list to be completed, smoothed out, striped. We still need the back of the Holcomb Building parking lot completed and striped. Last night, the Wood Center was striped, and so it should be looking sharp this morning. So that's a good win, and I know this goes into the thinking of your goal of converting our chip and tar roads to hot mix asphalt. Just a couple of other items. Well, we're reporting that the shade structures are complete at the Clubhouse Pool and Sweetbriar Pool, and you can see those if you want to see how it turned out. And one thought we had, since we had such good success, the golf committee and our golf staff have talked about a shade structure for the cart and bag attendants. And so I've asked the maintenance department to look at scope out something for them. Maybe that's a less expensive approach, since now we know how to put these together and how to do them. The last item is an energy conservation item, and kudos to the building department taking the initiative on this, where they've installed LED lights in place of the conventional bulbs at the Equestrian Center riding ring, and we expect to see savings as time goes on for the replacement of those lights there. And remember, the riding ring allows us to have classes in inclement weather, so kudos to the staff on that one. So happy to answer any questions. Oh gosh, I did send you an addendum. Let me just quickly go over that. Yesterday's Lake Currents has a story about Rappahannock Electric Cooperative's work to clear right-of-ways of trees, and that's on page 15. It's a story by the forester from REC, and it's one of these things where you hate to see the trees go sometime, but if we have a bad storm or icy weather, you'll be glad that you still have power. So it's definitely a balancing act, and we wanted to make sure REC's information got out there. There's contact information if someone wants to follow up. I wanted to let you know where we are on 3 RFPs, requests for proposals as opposed to invitation for bids. And so there'll be proposals, interviews, and then recommendations to the board. And so you got the due dates for the pool management, annual financial audit, 401k review, and the golf maintenance contract. And you can see the schedule on those. All those are intended to give us the numbers we need to build the budget. And so you have that item. And then one other savings and efficiencies item we thought worth reporting. You'll remember in the referendum context and in the election context, we talked about emailing members information, and we said, well, we have about 650 members that don't have emails on file. Either they don't have email or they don't want to give us their emails. And kudos to the member services staff. They've been able to reduce that from 650 to 315. So they basically cut that in half. You think of all those letters that don't have to get mailed now for an item, an update item. And so they've also been able to get active phone numbers for all but 20 accounts, and that's been a struggle. Sometimes we don't have an email, we don't have a phone number for an account where we need to contact this person for a violation or some item, and now the staff has been working to fill those in. So it's a little thing, but it really means a lot when it comes to notifying you about something going on about your lot or about some business of the association, separate from, hey, there's a special at the clubhouse. I'm not talking about promoting a use. I'm talking about something like we need to contact you about something going on. For example, Chief mentioned some vandalism at Hollyfield Park. We sent an email to everyone in the 500 block of Constitution and said, hey, did you hear something on Sunday night? We had some vandalism. Did you happen to see it? So that's my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Directors, any questions for Phil? Walt?
Again, just to comment on the parking lots, I can report that the Wood Center parking lot was indeed striped last night. And perhaps you could just expand a little bit on the handicap parking situation at Wood Center, because there's a significant change from the way it was before we started this project, including that it's no longer the Ho Chi Minh Trail if you need some assistance getting into the building.
Yes. Okay. Let me try to do it justice. Thanks to the ad hoc Wood Center group, in which you'll hear a report from at the January meeting. The suggestion was we add some handicap parking spots closer to the building, and so in trying to balance the look of the building with the need to access it, we added 4 additional spots right close to the building. And you've seen those up close to the building. We still need to finish that off and improve the look of that situation. But you got 4 close to the building, and then in the parking lot there will be 4 more. And it takes 3 parking spots to make 2 handicap spots, because you have to hash the part in between so that there could be a lift. And so there's 8 parking spots nearest the building as they can be to the Wood Center, and then there are 2 handicap spots as near as they can be to the maintenance building. So anyone going to ECC for an item, et cetera, would have access there. So that's the improvement that's been put into place.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
We're now at item 5.8 on the agenda, committee reports. I'm going to ask Bill Ecology, External Affairs Chair, to come to the podium.
My name is Bill Ecology. I have copies of my reports. I did submit the report to Lori if you need it electronically.
We've got it in our books.
It's in our books.
Thank you, Bill.
I'm Bill Lukaczyk of the External Affairs Committee. I'm no longer chairman, but I was chairman for the previous calendar year. I'm secretary now. One of our purposes is to monitor what our governments are doing around us, and Orange County Planning Commission is one of the things that we monitor. And there were several big projects that are ongoing this year. One of them is the Redfish solar photovoltaic electric generating facility, which is going in Catharpin Road. We reviewed the project, and the only submission we had was we want a return to green proposal, which I think was adopted. Signature Station was approved. We also submitted some observations on that. The big project really that's coming that's not yet approved is Wilderness Crossing. It's a major impact at Route 20 and Route 3. We were monitoring the Orange County negotiations with the builder. Attached to the presentation were maps of what I just talked about. Item D, the Orange County Planning Commission has also agreed to change the accessory dwelling unit rule change that Lee Frame covered. What Lee did not tell you was that they did change the rule so that the accessory dwelling does not have to be separate from the primary dwelling. It can be now within the dwelling, and that's an important change that we would like the board to consider the impact. I know we have this household cleaning unit rule, but we may want to consider it for impact regarding, say, an elderly parent living in a house, or a son or daughter living in a house in an apartment, or potentially, as we are getting older, to consider revisions to allow live-in home care assistant in the home in such an apartment. Furthermore, as I'll cover later in the real estate report, the affordability index of our homes has gotten quite high, as probably you would expect. And so we should consider possibly the impact of the affordability of our homes on the employees that we employ here. It looks like many homes now, most homes are unaffordable to many of our younger employees that work here. So it's possible the accessory dwelling unit, as intended, would make homes more affordable, or living more affordable in the immediate area. I'll go on to the next item. We have an ad hoc working group within our committee called the Fiber Optic to the Home Working Group. We've been in contact with several communication companies, two of them being Verizon and Hotwire. Both of those companies require significant take rates, and we've deemed those unacceptable, so we've kind of cut off our communications with them. We had a get-together meeting with Orange County FiberLink just to meet their management. We are monitoring their build-out and their take rate. It's very strong, it's very good, and we have a small proposal floating to them now to test connect some homes along Flat Run Road and Goodwin Leach. Our current plans are to let FiberLink continue its build-out until it gets near completion, you know, where their staff is now freed up a little bit more, and then we will possibly engage them at a low level at that point. Since the infrastructure bill went through last night, we are also reviewing the Fed funding of the internet build-out rules to see if any internet build-out rules can apply to us for possibly funding. And we're continuing to write informational articles in Lake Currents. I believe there was one in there today. And at the end of all our articles, we are proposing a town hall meeting. And there's also an email address where people can write to us. We have over 50 email addresses now that we've collected. The ad hoc working group has met this year and will continue to meet as needed. And basically, the effort is directed to FiberLink. And I've left the website link if you want to research more what FiberLink is. We're also studying the possibility of third gate public funding. As Planning Board has issued an important, has stressed the third gate. We're trying to discuss with Orange County and Virginia to contribute the funding of the construction of the third gate. At the Orange County level, there's a problem with one of the board members. We're working through that. He's against the third gate. But we feel that there's enough, what I call adverse taxation, in the areas of rights-of-way management fee. I don't know if you've noticed on your telephone bill, you pay a rights-of-way management fee every telephone bill. Phil could tell you we don't have any state right-of-ways on our properties. Also, I believe it's a new rule. The DGIF has now told all the boat dealers to collect the registration fee on your boats immediately if you buy a boat from a dealer. So regardless of where the boat goes. So in other words, if you buy a boat, comes on our private lake, stays on our private lake for its entire life, it's still going to be registered in the state of Virginia. And also on the Orange County end, there's, as you can see from our parking condition here today, there's no parks and rec facilities in this end of the county. So we would like to see in-kind funding of this project as a remedy for adverse taxation. There's also voting redistricting going on, and I've included the map of the Orange County Board of Supervisors changes. You'll see that Lake of the Woods is almost exclusively one board supervisor, with the exception of a few houses along Route 20. So that's a good thing. We're basically represented with one person. And then the state representative is going to be redistricting. So we're going to be watching what redistricting is going on the state level. Other monitoring is, and I know Orange County Schools did not report today, but they've been reporting to us that schools are fully open with students wearing masks. There's no critical breakouts occurring yet that have forced any school closures. That's a good thing. There is a school bus driver shortage. As you see from the news reports, other counties have been having problems with school bus shortages. We're right at the edge on our school bus situation. There is a lack of substitute bus drivers in our county, but they've been able to get by so far. And there's research going on to build a vocational tech center. Culpeper just introduced a very nice vocational tech center. Orange County is going to try to create one too. As far as the real estate market, we get real estate market updates. The median sell price of homes in our Lake of the Woods is now $325,000. So you got to think about the affordability if we want to think about how our employees are paid versus the affordability index of our homes. It's a 10% year-to-year price increase. There's been 304 home sales recorded so far this year. There's only 22 active listings, which they tell me is a very low inventory level. 37 are under contract. Now, this number does not include what we have at Lake of the Woods on permit build right now, under construction. So there may be quite a bit more appearing on the market because of the completion of constructions. And most homes are sold at above or at the asking price. That's my report, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Directors, any questions of Bill? No.
Thank
Bill,
you.
very thorough. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to item 6.1. First, are there any other committee reports? None that we see down here. Okay. 6.1, Cliff.
I move the board adopt Resolution 2021-26, a policy resolution regarding the procedures for new and amended bylaws and regulations effective immediately.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 2021-26, a policy resolution regarding the procedure for new and amended bylaws and regulations effective immediately. Any comments? Cliff.
Just a short one. This came about because of the annual or the 5-year review of the Rules Committee Charter. And in doing that, there's things in the Rules Committee Charter that weren't in the procedures to change regulations and change bylaws. And rather than leave the charter the way it was, their authority should be in the bylaws and in the rules. So that's what was proposed. Walt and I worked through the Rules Committee. We had more than one meeting with them. Very cooperative, very collegial, I guess is the right word. I took most of their suggestions. It was out for comment. I didn't see any comments, negative comments come back. So this is the final movement at this point to implement what's been worked on. And what this does is it provides somewhat broader authority to the Rules Committee. When they look at a proposed rule or bylaw, they can now make comments. If they don't like it, they can make a comment about it. They also will look at whether it's fair, reasonable, and equitable, and offer comments about that. So it gives the committee, and by extension, the members, a chance to really comment and get into our bylaws, change procedures, and our rules procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Walt?
Just also what it does is it gives us more information when we're actually deciding what to do, because, you know, I think we're all believers in having as many people put eyes on something and give us their observations, because, you know, all of us can remember at least one situation where we thought we had it nailed down, and then we found out that there were a few things that perhaps had not been looked at as closely as they should have been. So getting the maximum input on the front end is really helpful.
Phil?
Mr. President, I wanted to thank Rules Chair Kurt Hines. He actually caught something about the resolution, and we made sure that it got done. The amendment to the bylaws and the amendment to the regulation are almost word for the word the same now, which is good. It eliminated some of the discrepancies, but he had caught something with the resolution. You have the corrected resolution in front of you. And I would also congratulate the committee, too, because of this review at the 5-year mark. And we should be reviewing old sections of our regulation that haven't been comprehensively reviewed. And right now, I've got the Clubhouse regulation and Regulation 15 with regard to fees being reviewed. The board's talked about reviewing Regulation 14 violations. So we should see these from time to time, because there may be rules that can be streamlined or need to be looked at. As Cliff said, is it reasonable? Is it enforceable? Is it fair? Those are the 3 standards. Just really quickly, to let all members know, there's a 5-step process for adopting a rule. First, the board votes on whether it has merit and refers it to rules and LOWA attorney. Second, the Rules Committee and the LOWA attorney report back to the board on their findings. Third, the board votes to publish it in late currents for member comments. Fourth, the board votes on final approval on the policy resolution with an effective date, and Cliff's motion in a minute is going to say effective immediately. And sometimes we delay that some for publication or for notification of members. And the 5th step is we have to publish it in late currents. And so that's the important final step, that the final rule gets published. So thank you. Just want to make those comments.
Very good. Any other director questions? Are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we go now to item 6.2 on the agenda. Phil, would you lead us on the proposed amendments to regulation V, B, C, and K?
Right.
Use of individually owned property regarding vehicles.
Right.
With advertising.
Right. This is Regulation 5, and it has to do with 3 subsections of that regulation with regard to vehicles with advertising parked on private lots. Essentially, what the outcome of this will be is if there is a vehicle parked or placed or stored on a residential lot that displays advertising, whether it be writing or graphics, it constitutes a sign and is prohibited without written permission from the ECC according to our restrictive covenants. And this has been working its way through the rulemaking process. And originally, this item was on for action today. The Rules Committee wants another meeting to consider this item, and they had asked that the board, and I'd sent you a copy of their memo from September to the board regarding having the ECC look at this as well to determine if there needs to be additional language. Those conversations have happened with the ECC and with our LOWA attorney, and I'm be glad to discuss that further, but I believe Walt has some things he'd like to say. Bottom line, there's no action today, but the Rules Committee is going to meet by the end of the month, and then this will come back to you for your final action at a later time. Actually, this would be to the next step of publishing in late currents when it comes back to you.
Thank you, Phil. Walt?
Sure. There have been some discussions about the Rules Committee's concerns about this thing, and Cliff and I have talked about it, and I've circulated something, and I've also had a meeting with Kurt Hines, and the concerns they have really can boil down to three things. One is if you actually look at the heading that we currently have, you wouldn't realize it included vehicles that have display and advertisement. And so part of this is sort of like making sure that somebody, if they're looking at the rules, can know it's actually there without having to sort of wade through the whole thing. It's sort of giving people a flag at the front end. Their second concern was that as the draft is written, it was open to the interpretation that even if you got a written exception from the ECC, you would still need the screen and cover, et cetera, et cetera. And the third was that there is no criterion for if you went for written permission, what you had to be able to show. And I think ECC said, well, we already know how to do that, but the problem, I think, once again, is that they know what they're doing, but the average member could need a prompt as to what to look for in terms of what they need to be able to show. And so what I've done is I've cooked up a revision that is very modest, that basically tries to address those issues. And as far as the section having to deal with what the criteria are, is just really referring them to Section 9 of the Restrictive Covenants, which sets forth the authority of the ECC to grant a variance. And that's really the standard that the ECC uses on all these things. So the ECC doesn't need the clarification. They already have it in their restrictive covenants. But the average person might not know that. So it's basically just a reference to what the standard they'll have to meet is. And that really is an undue hardship that doesn't wreak havoc with the rest of the regulations. So it's pretty, I think it's pretty straightforward. And I'm going to propose that, in fact, I'll make a motion that we refer the suggested language I have to address these issues to both rules and to the ECC to get their feedback as to, whether they still think it needs some improvement or whether or not these improvements are unnecessary. So I would like to refer it back to those two committees for one final, opportunity to give them their opinions on this.
Second.
Okay.
And I will give Linda the exact language so that it can be reflected in the minutes.
I'll find some language for you.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded to refer this item back to Rules and ECC. Is there any other discussion? Cliff?
Yeah, I'd like to comment. Walt and I discussed the concerns of the Rules Committee, and we worked out some language that he referenced. And I think it's important because ECC is one of the two committees we have that actually operate in lieu of the board. So ECC needs to be wired into any rules change that they have to implement and make decisions about. And I think what we're proposing right now is that it's for that to happen. And ECC and Rules Committee get one final chance to send it back to the board with whatever their recommendations might be, and then we're going to have to figure out what else we need to do with it.
Any other comments from directors? Rick?
Thank you. And I know Rules is going to take a close look at this, but I would just point out that I think the last sentence in Section 2D is a little bit confusing and perhaps misplaced, where it talks about blank magnetic signs covering up commercial markings. As it's placed in that section where it talks about trucks with ladders or commercial equipment visible, would seem to imply that the magnetic sign kind of cures the problem of the truck being visible. And I would suggest it's perhaps better placed in Section 2F than in 2D, but I would just encourage Rules Committee to take a close look at that.
Thank you, Rick. Any other director comments? Phil?
Okay, a couple things. I'm thinking about what Rick has said about perhaps it ought to be separated out from D and you said put it in,
F.
possibly put it in F. It may be as simple as just moving that sentence. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay. I had two comments. First of all, I don't know if you want to make part of your reference back to the LOWA attorney. Whether you do or not, I will discuss these changes with him, and I can even wait till after the committee process happens so we can get the final on this. So that we'll just circle back to the LOWA attorney. Right. As I'm listening to what Walt is saying and thinking about it, I could see that when somebody's turned down for their large vehicle with advertising on it, they might say, well, I want to apply for a variance right away. But that may have some good outcomes as well, because remember, why are we doing this to start with? And that is to keep the residential feel throughout the community, so you're not looking at commercial vehicles. And it may be that you're going to get an up and down vote from ECC, and so it's going to be very clear what the outcome is, and it's not going to be interpreted by the staff. It's going to be interpreted by the committee. So that may be a positive thing, I guess. What we don't know, and it's up to the discretion of the committee of whether they're going to actually grant some exceptions to this, and there will be signs on lots.
Yeah. Well, once again, I think that the reference I threw in here to section 9 of the restrictive covenants, that makes it clear that the ECC does not have unbridled discretion to do whatever it wants. It is, they can use their discretion if there's an undue hardship, and also it doesn't basically undermine the regulations. So, if somebody has an undue hardship because they can't have a chicken rendering facility here, they're not going to get their chicken rendering facility just because it's an undue hardship. There's a pretty tight standard in there, but the thing is that I think the concern that I had, and I think the Rules Committee had, was that if you're on the ECC, or if you're a board member, you're up to snuff on all our governing documents. The typical member is not, and they wouldn't even know where to look. And so what this is basically saying, hey, if you want to know what the discretion is, go to section 9 of the restrictive covenants.
And Mr. President,
Yes.
Section 9 in the restrictive covenants has two things. It says overcome practical difficulties and prevent unnecessary hardships.
Right.
And so I would think the first one would be is I can't screen it, I can't put it in the garage, and I can't cover it. So I'd like it on my lot. So I think that's going to be that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. And as the GM, I would say, well, you could rent a spot in the RV boat storage, and that would be a way that you could handle this. So that's, if we're referring to that section, I think that's going to be the discussion at the meeting.
Right. But I think that, again, part of the concern was that, what are the standards that the ECC uses, and how much discretion do they have? And I think it's a mystery to most folks unless you tell them where to look.
And if I might just add something, what the sentence that Walt is adding and under letter F there is, any such grant of written permission from the ECC shall be consistent with the requirements of section 9 of the restrictive covenants. So that's the language that has been added.
And our LOWA attorney, and from where I understand the ECC stands, is they didn't believe that they could enumerate what those criteria would be. They would have to look at each individual situation to see what could be done in terms of screening, garaging, covering, et cetera. And so each case needs to stand on its own. And so to give criteria might be neither the ECC nor the attorney thought we ought to enumerate those now. The one place we do let you know what kinds of signs can be approved is in the regulations itself. For sale signs, yard sale signs, trespassing signs, all those are in there. Political signs and flags and banners, all that's in there to say exactly what you can do.
Okay, so I'm going to try to summarize this motion that was made, seconded, and discussed. We are moving to send back to Rules Committee and ECC, one final chance of revision for use of property individually owned and LOWA-owned property, recreational vehicles, trailers, advertising of any kind displayed. Linda said she is going to try to get with Walt and formalize that, but hopefully we know what we're voting on here. So let's take that vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Item 6.3 on the agenda, Walt.
I move the board adopt Resolution 2021-28, an administrative resolution accepting the Level 2 Replacement Reserve Report for FY 2022 dated November 3, 2021, for planning and budgeting purposes.
Second.
Say that again.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt Resolution 2128, an administrative resolution accepting the Level 2 Replacement Reserve Report fiscal year 2022 dated November 3rd, 2021 for planning and budgeting purposes. Discussion. Phil, you want to comment?
Yes, sir. So your action today would be on a modified version of what you saw at your special board meeting on October 26th. We've taken into consideration the changes that you've made, and we can talk about those briefly. But I wanted to hit on the fiscal impact because there is a change from where we were. So in round numbers, the new CTR would be about $2 million. Right now, it's in round numbers 1.7 in the current year. So I would congratulate you on doing important work in reviewing this plan in detail. You've not only done your duty as a board member, but you've fulfilled state law, which I guess is also doing your duty as a board member. State law says you have to review these kinds of studies every 5 years. I always say that the level 2 study is always going to be some sticker shock because you're going to see that you need to do something sooner, or the reserve specialist is going to take into consideration adjustments to costs. And that's what's happening here. We did try to make some adjustments to smooth it out the best we can. The adjustments you made at your meeting, we had mentioned that we could move some of the electrical work in the clubhouse out. And so you see that enumerated. Also, there were some changes that you made at the meeting with regard to the Route 3 whole 16 fence, and so we made those changes. Also, I think one of the biggest things that was different is we moved the tar and chip program to the reserve study, and we're going to track it through that. And we knew there would be an additional amount, net increase of about $7,000 to do that, but we're now tracking that through the reserve study, and we can track as we convert. As you've said, we can convert as we convert to hot mix asphalt roads. We can convert that change over there. I did have one additional item which I notified the board, and that is to move the roads equipment storage barn from FY22 to FY23. That was a $95,000 item. It did not have a $95,000 impact since it was before the peak year, but it probably helped a little bit. The roads foreman and director of facilities and I walked and looked at the building, and I would tell you the rivets are rusty and it's got some holes in it, but it's going to hold on for another year. It's not peeling back, so we can wait one more year. And this was at the request of the ad hoc Wood Center committee that gives its report in January. So we thought we'll be team players and just move it 1 year to see if it helps any. So that's what we have before you. Again, this is for budgeting and planning purposes, so that means this number will go into the draft budget that comes out to you on the 19th, and this will be the plan that we go forward with into the budget year as we go into the budget. Finance and planning joint hearings. This will be the set plan.
Very good. Director, questions, comments?
Yeah.
Walt?
Yeah, just a brief comment because the there are folks listening to this and who will watch it who did not have the misfortune of having to sit through our long meeting when we went over this. And some important pieces of information to realize, as Phil said, the new number, contribution to reserve this year, is just over $2 million. Last year, it was just under $1.7 million. So you have a $300,000 increase on a $1.7 million base, which is substantial. But when you look at what's going on here, we asked for identification of those items which had shown a 50% or more increase from last year to this year. And there were a bunch of them. And the increases on just the sort of really huge increases in the cost of items, those items were $361,000. So what we're seeing is the impact of inflation. And there's no getting away from it. And it showed up here. And it's going to show up across the board as we go forward on the budget. And I think the members have got to be realistic as to what's going on in the economy and the price pressures that are going to be we're going to be facing as we look into the rest of this budget year, and also when we're trying to figure out what's a realistic budget for next year. So I think to some extent, members got to be prepared that we're dealing with a level of inflation that we haven't seen in a number of years.
Any other director comments? Again, this is for budget and planning purposes. This will be combined with the new capital plan that Jim Zavrel presented earlier. Those two components form all of the capital needs, and then the operations budgets, Phil and staff are preparing those. Those will be reviewed on at our budget hearings November 29th, December 1st. I'm sorry, November 30th, December 1st, and December 2nd. So we invite members who want to see that process to come and join us for those hearings. They begin at 9 o'clock each day. Any other comments? If not, we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
You need a substitute for Carl here.
Huh?
You need a substitute for Carl.
I'm sorry, yeah, Jennifer's got it.
Okay.
Jennifer.
I move the board approve the amendments to the Maintenance and Ecology Charter.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the amendments to the Maintenance and Ecology Charter. Discussion. Anyone?
So I'll
Terry?
just say quickly, all this does is clarify and make the M&E charter more consistent with other charters in terms of general mission, and then more consistent with the Lakes Charter in terms of who has primary roles above and below the water, essentially.
Okay. Rick, anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone else? We're ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We are now at item 7.1, new business. Rick,
I move the board adopt the board goals for the 2021-2022 board term dated November 6th, 2021.
Second.
moved and seconded to adopt the board goals for the 2021-2022 board term dated November 6, 2021. Discussion. Anyone? Phil?
Mr. President, I would say that from our last discussion, we adjusted Board 4's implementation plan to show you a report in the April-May timeframe from the working group and the engineer regarding the main gate. And you heard what the chief had to say during his report, that we're going to try some interim measures, and that's part of the goal, to implement interim solutions. So we're going to try to do those along the way, but this way you'll get a report in the April-May timeframe on the main gate before you get the final report, or at least the status where we are at the end of the summer in July, August on the third gate strategies. So we divided that up.
Okay. Terry?
I just wanted to make one report, and that's on the board goal number 3, automation of amenity payments, which management has already started working on, and they have implemented the paperless early payment on site at the pickleball tennis courts. And I've gotten feedback from pickleball players that they have used it, that it was very easy to use, and they are very pleased. So bravo to getting a head start on that. Thank you.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Any other director comment? Walt?
Yeah, just a comment here that in talking to some members, it's clear that some people think that the board has already got, you know, a plan in concrete for what we're going to do with congestion at the main entrance, and also that we've got ourselves a concrete plan for asphalt, right? A very detailed, the decision has already been made on asphalt, and I think it's I just want to point out to people that on number 4 goal, it's pursue resolution to main gate inbound congestion. We don't have the answer here yet. We're not getting ready to do something other than look at it. The same thing with roadway infrastructure, i.e., you know, asphalt versus chip and tar. No one's made a decision with regard to this. I know some folks think that they're expecting the asphalt truck next week. And we're on the front end of the process to decide whether or not it's doable for one thing. It may turn out we can't get there from here.
All right. Any other comments? We're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Rick, back to you, sir.
I move the board adopt an addendum to the LOWA and Allied Universal Security Services Agreement regarding body cameras.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt the addendum to the LOWA and Allied Universal Security Services Amendment regarding body cameras. We had fortune of having Chief Walker here earlier to answer many of our questions. Any other comments from directors? Anything, Phil?
Mr. President, just point out that these body cameras will be worn by the special conservators of the peace and not the access control or the armed security guards. Only the scope officers will wear these. The other thing is we'll have to add this to our replacement reserve in some way, and we'll mark a year out in the future in which these need to be replaced. Think of them as our security radios. Likewise, the security body cams donated to us from by the sheriff will have to be replaced. We'll put some amount into each year's budget to replace batteries, et cetera. So it's a gift, but we'll have to reserve to replace it as we go, and it'll be built into the budget that way. And so this is ready for action. It's been reviewed by our attorney, and you'll be actually amending the LOWA AUS agreement as laid out here on the amendment and attachment C, Exhibit C.
Okay. Any other director comments or questions? Hearing none, let's take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're now at item 7.3. Cliff.
I move the board approve the lot redivision for Section 13, Lot 162 and 163, and authorize the president to sign.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the lot redivision for Section 13, Lot 162 and 163, and authorize the president to sign. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Walt?
First, just a question, and it didn't dawn on me till I was just looking at it right now, is that we had a situation either earlier this year or second half of last year when we were doing the lots over, used to be the chemical building on the golf course. I just want to make sure that this isn't going to create a postal numbering problem. We've been through that once and it wasn't pleasant.
Yeah, what you're referring to is the 911 center said that the members had to renumber their
Correct.
they had to readdress their numbers. I don't believe it would because originally this was two separate LOA lots. I haven't looked at it exactly, but because there were two separate LOA lots, there would have been two separate addresses for those. I'll follow up on it, but I don't see that as being
I
an
assumed it
issue.
was, but, I think I learned a long time ago that
Yeah.
it's a mistake to assume anything.
Right. And Mr. President, we assumed we had asked the member directly, and the member did not get back to us. What is your purpose for redividing? We assume it's to sell. So we assume that they're going to sell it, and there'll be a different residence on that other lot. But we're assisting this member to redivide these, and no matter what, they pay assessment on each one of the lots. So whether they're joined or separated, they pay 2 assessments. Our LOA attorney has reviewed it and made some corrections that will have to be made to the document before the president signs it.
Okay, good. So, and the other thing, just a note here is that there was a little bit of a dust-up earlier this year over a lot that's now being built on where there was an adjustment to a property line a number of years ago. Now here I'm looking at this one. It appears as though it's just going back to the original lines where there's no been shifting in the square footage on the way the lots were way back when. So, it's the way it was originally. It's no tinkering with the lines to make them different than they were originally. And I think that's an important thing, given the dust-up we had.
Thank you, Walt. And Phil, just one clarification too. This was coming before us earlier. There was some question about whether the stamp from Orange County was up to date, and that has been fixed. Everything is now.
We've communicated to the member that they're relying on a notary's signature that's expired, and our attorney has signaled to them this may be an issue, but we're glad to go along if this assists you, but just warning that when you get all done and go to the courthouse with all your easement documents and with Lowe's signatures and the utility signatures, the clerk may or may not accept it. And we did not hear back from the member on that point. So it was approval and with a warning, so to speak, or a caution, so to speak.
Very good. Thank you, Phil.
Mhm.
Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Let's see. We are now at director comments. Any director comments? Anything? Nothing? Okay, our next scheduled meetings. Next regular meeting of the board, Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, at the Clubhouse, a 1 p.m. executive session, 2 p.m. open session. I failed to mention at the beginning of this meeting that we did not have an executive session today. I meant to do that. My apologies. The next meeting after that, special Board of Directors meeting, dinner with Orange County supervisors, as Lee pointed out earlier, Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, at the Clubhouse, 6 p.m. open session. After that, the regular board meeting for December, we only have one scheduled in December. That is Wednesday, December 15th, here at the Community Center. That's 1 p.m. executive session, 2 p.m. open session. Jennifer?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. No discussion. We are adjourned.